are back with Jason Buck. This is Candace Salima with Turning the Tide, and we are going into the second hour of our show. We have had a fascinating first hour with congressional candidate Jason Buck, as we have talked about some of the biggest issues that are facing America right now. Jason, did you want to sum up what we were talking about with the creation of jobs and the business atmosphere here in America?
Yes. I mean, and I am oversimplifying, but the answer is simple. Limited federal government, get less regulations, clean it up, give states control of the regulations in their state, because every state's needs are different than the other state. Reduce those regulations, reduce taxes, make it efficient, get the federal government out of business. Energy Department is an example, and Solyndra, horrendous. Get the money in the hands of entrepreneurs, small businesses, corporations, individuals, and we do better with it. The government should only promote and protect and then stay out of our way. And we've got to make that happen. I would love to fight for economic safe zones, make Utah one, and as a test pot for the federal government to learn a lesson and say, let us have foreign companies come in here at this tax level. Let us contract with them with 10-year contracts so they know they're safe from tax raises. Here's a flat tax to the corporation. Here's what the capital gains is going to be. Here's what the regulations are going to be. Right to work state, no ties, and see how much foreign investment we could get in Utah.
That would be great.
Yeah. So those are the type of ideas that I don't mind throwing up on a whiteboard and pounding everybody down the Republican halls and Blue Dog Democrats and whoever I can get on to get common sense and empower the states to accomplish these great things that we could do, because states move faster. They're more nimble. They answer to the people quicker. We have more control of our states. They represent our values, right? Utah values different than Connecticut's or Massachusetts or Georgia, for that matter. But we need to have those 50 testing pots. We need to have the independence of the states that was intended by the Founding Fathers, and our economic woes go away.
Which would be nice. We have the means. We have the means here in the United States of America to overcome this if the federal government will get out of the way.
Exactly. And that is what's holding us back. It is the answer to our ills, and we have to win this battle. And it's going to be the states' rights fight of our lives, binding together these states of like mind, of 2 million to 5 million to 6 million people, because we're the ones that have that conservative mindset of states' rights. And the states that are of New York and Illinois and Chicago and those major cities, they want to take from the government coffers. They want to access our money in the heartland of America and use it for their entitlements and welfare culture. And we've got to be able to protect ourselves from that, and we have to win this battle.
Yeah, because a welfare culture, an entitlement culture, cannot survive. It is not self-sustaining. And so that is not a path that we can continue to go down. We must get back to free enterprise. We must get back to what made America great. And that was Americans rolling up their sleeves and getting to work without the federal government taking so much of their income that they cannot survive. And that's really what it boils down to, in my opinion. And so, Jason, I like what you had to say about that type of what we need to do to create jobs to make our economy healthy again here in America. And there is another step. Now, our own Senator Mike Lee has proposed a balanced budget amendment, which I can get behind. I do support it because Congress is showing its inability to have some self-control.
Yeah.
And so I'm okay with that. But we've also got a movement within the states calling for an Article 5 amendment convention, and it is very different from a constitutional convention. And so I would like us to spend the next 25 minutes talking about a balanced budget amendment, because that is one of the things that you put on your website, where you stand, what the pitfalls are that you see. And then I would like to also get your thought on the Article 5 amendment convention that is being called, that basically states, it's a very simple amendment that states that if the Congress and the president want to raise the debt ceiling, they have to get it approved by the states first.
Yeah.
So let's start with balanced budget amendment, and then we'll move on to the Article 5 amendment convention.
You know what? I completely support a balanced budget amendment, because Congress and Senate have shown that they don't have the discipline to live within a balanced budget, to control, make the hard decisions. They all want to keep their own baby, and nobody wants to cut anything, and so it's that whole entitlement culture, and you're not winning that war. So a balanced budget amendment would be a good thing. You have to be very careful in how that's written. Whenever you add an amendment to the Constitution, I think you have to look at the law of unintended consequences. We've had some amendments in the past that I believe could have done harm to us and have eroded the Constitution. And so, if I could push the Jason Buck fantasy world, button and reset, I'd like to go back to the Bill of Rights and return us to like we were walking out the, first 10 amendments and
start over.
Right there.
Well, there are some of those amendments that are good.
There's some.
Giving women the right to vote, enforcing the all men are created equal clause. I didn't have problems with those. 16th and 17th Amendments, huge problems. Huge problems, because that's what set us up for a huge disaster that we're at now. Yes,
it did set up a huge disaster, empowered the federal government in taxation. Prior to the 16th Amendment, the federal government basically sent an assessment to the states based on their population. And so in that case, if Utah has 3 million people and the nation is 300 million people, Utah would be given an assessment for 1% of the nation's budget. And it'd be up to Utah to gather those revenues and so they have their own tax system, and whether that was consumption or income tax or property or whatever, it would be Utah's way to raise.
What's interesting that a lot of people don't understand is prior to the 16th Amendment being ratified, citizens only paid taxes to the state. They never paid the federal government.
Right. And
but
so what
the 16th Amendment, we started paying the state. We still paid the states, and now we have to pay the federal government too. And the federal government takes everything we make.
Yes.
The states.
And the states lost power because it was the government asking the states to give them money at that time. And now all that did is empower the federal government to grow bigger and stronger, more centralized. And it took power away from the states.
Which is why an Article 5 Amendment Convention is so intriguing.
Yes, it's intriguing to me. And I just say, I like that idea. You just need to it has to be constitutional, or it has to come back and pass that litmus test.
Well, it is absolutely written within the Fifth Amendment.
Yes.
Article 5, I'm sorry. Article 5. And it is written in such a way, very simple, it cannot be twisted, and it simply says if you want to raise the debt ceiling, you got to get 2/3 of the states to agree to that.
Yes. And I like those type of things. I think similar to what we'll have to do on all the states right.
Yeah, it puts us back pre-16th.
Yes.
About, kind of.
Yeah. And hey, let's go and look. And that's some of those ideas, absolutely the type of things I'll fight for. That reset button I'm talking about, yeah. Now, you have to do it right, yes. Were there some good things in there? There were. But there are some bad things. I look at the 17th Amendment, and I'm going, no, wait, part of the checks and balances that our founding fathers established for us was Congress, elected by the people, would always have a tendency to ask for too much and grow too big, trying to appease their voters, right? That'd be the tendency.
You mean exactly what's happened.
But the Senate was appointed by the state legislatures. And so the Senate was what? They're representing the interests of the state, not individual voters. And so if you're in Kentucky, for example, and their senator voted for Barack Obama's Wipe Out the Coal Industry initiative.
Oh, my goodness.
The state of Kentucky legislature get together and the people and go, hey, that senator's fired right now, right?
Yes.
So you had senators representing the state's interests and their business interests and more common sense. And the Senate ended up being a check and balance against the Congress. Well, now when they were able to slip that through, you have a bunch of senators trying to appease the masses, and there's not that check and balance that the founding fathers had intended.
I know, and it is extremely dangerous. That amendment has caused a huge amount of trouble, and exactly what the founding fathers feared would happen has now happened.
Yes, that was a big blow to the original framework of the Constitution. There's no question. So now you have two bodies out there with the same motivation, right, working the two different, the House and the Senate, but they have the same motivation behind them versus separate motivation and state interests versus, personal individual interests. So you got to look at that law of unintended consequences whenever you enact an amendment, and just be really, very careful with it and make sure it's written correctly, that it's not going to infringe upon state rights. But it's
and you put it in a very educated way. For me, I just say, why don't you look beyond the nose on your face? Look beyond the end of your nose and realize that if you do this, that is going to happen in the future.
Exactly. Well,
take down to layman's terms.
I know, but everybody's like, hey, a football player's educated? No farmer?
Of course you are. You went to Ricks and BYU, which are both my alma maters, by the way.
Yeah, love Ricks and BYU, old Idaho kid.
Me too.
But
anyway, it is something that has to happen. We have to balance the budget. We are now $15 trillion in debt. That doesn't count the deficit spending that they're doing, which is averaging at about between 1.5 and 2 trillion per year.
We have to, and we have to be able to protect ourselves as states from other states and their behaviors. Meaning, when you have Illinois senators actually float around a proposal of going after the profitable states' surpluses to take that to pay for national debt and their things, boy, we are in scary, scary times, because Illinois, Chicago,
distribution of wealth. That's what we're talking about.
Commingling. Well, let's talk about commingling funds. If you're in private business in investments and somebody commingles funds, man, people are going to jail, right?
Right.
But the government's taking our state's monies, commingling it, redistributing it to other states to pay off favors that are going to vote for them. Do you think Barack Obama wants to give help to Utah that, the liberal Democrat would never win? No, they just come here.
Really, really bad in Utah?
They come here, they take our tax dollars, give it to other places, to come out with the sign of a pen and take more of our land because they don't care about us.
I know. That's the thing that is sad is Utah's in the crosshairs right now. Number one, we're the best managed state in the union. Number two, we still have a high unemployment. 7% is too high. We've got to be down between 2 and 3. Yes. We have to. And with the federal government targeting us the way they have, they filed lawsuits against Utah too.
Yes. And that's why your article, or the Article 5 you're talking about, that's things like that are good. Getting states like Wyoming and Montana and their representatives, their state legislatures and their attorney generals very coordinated and working together to win the states' rights battle is so key to us, because we cannot have Chicago, Illinois, which really runs all of Illinois, because there's many good conservative farmers in southern Illinois, right, and good conservative people, but Chicago rules Illinois. But you have those type of states infringing on the rights of Utah, which is taking place right now. We've got to correct that. They have to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. Utah should not have to suffer the consequences of California's actions or Illinois' actions.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly, yes.
And so we've got to make that separation the way the Constitution intended, so that we're not responsible for their behaviors. Because our behavior in Utah, whether it's education, land management, business, our whole philosophy, it's so different from Chicago, Illinois, it can be farther apart. But yet we get intertwined and we're suffering economically for them and big central government and California and New York when we shouldn't be.
Oh, absolutely. And what it all boils down to is, like you said, is what needs to happen in the economy is the federal government needs to get out of the way. Regulation needs to be pared way back so that we can manage our own states. We can utilize our own resources. I mean, California doesn't need to be broke. They are so rich in natural resources, but the environmentalists and the liberals have completely cut off any more exploration there, and they're floundering.
They're floundering, but they're making everybody else flounder too because we're forced to live by the same regulations as California.
I know, and that's what makes me crazy.
We should not be.
No, we shouldn't.
It was not intended. Those are not federal issues. They've far stepped over their bounds with much of the regulation. They use our taxes to hold us hostage, as we had mentioned earlier. From everything from energy to transportation to Department of Education, they hold it over us to implement their mores and their business. And
well, the sad thing is California as an entire state has an entitlement attitude. They want to continue living off the federal government. They don't want to be self-supportive or self-sustaining. If they did, they would tell the liberals and they would tell the environmentalists to go jump in a lake, and they would, because we have the technology now to go after our natural resources without leaving a big imprint.
Exactly. Like I said, Utah loves their land. Nobody in Utah would stand by and watch our land be mismanaged and be gutted. But we have the technology to drill for the oil, to drill for the natural gas, to mine the coal correctly, to harvest the timber, and so it's healthy instead of watching it grow old and die with pine beetle and burn down and kill some poor firefighter that's out there fighting it. And the animals.
You know what? Now that you mention that, Jason, tell me what they don't get about that. I don't understand it. It's common sense. You've got to keep the dead wood down so there won't be fires.
Well, old growth. I mean, to listen to scientists talk about old growth, any farmer or that lived in animal husbandry, farming, agriculture, timber. I worked in the timber industry in Idaho. I not only farmed, but I went up and planted trees and cut trees and worked in the big equipment and worked at the sawmill. And what did Barack Obama do in his life? He went. Most of the people in D.C., they go to their great universities. They live in the elite academia life. And then they move over into government. And they do not know how to get down in the dirt and plant a little seedling tree and what it means to space them correctly and what it means to weed your garden and kill the weeds on your farm so your crops produce.
And you know what? They also don't know what it means to have the responsibility of understanding that if you have animals, you have to, for instance, if you have a dairy, whether it's goat or cow, you have to milk those animals morning and night. You have to feed those animals. You have to care for those animals. They will die without you.
Yes.
They've never had that experience, Jason, so they don't understand natural consequences.
Exactly. And so we have people out there that are they're intellectual elitists. They don't have that simple black and white functionality of problem solving and understanding. Whereas at the local level, Utahns would be much better at it because we're closer to the state, and the people in Salt Lake City are going to listen to the people in Delta and Sanpete County, and we're going to make it work for the state. And then people understand when you get on TV and say, hey, if we don't allow these trees to die by pine beetle and old disease, old growth, a private forest that's selectively harvested, and then you spray grass seed over it after you selectively harvest, you have more feed, you end up with more deer, more elk, more animals, more lumber, more jobs, safer for everybody, sportsmen win, right? People that want to go hiking win, the logs win, when it's managed correctly. But we have Sierra Club and other people through the Soros and people that come in with all their national influence and come into the state and they file lawsuits and they keep us from managing our land correctly.
They're morons. I'm going to just say it. You don't have to say it. I'm going to say it. They're complete and utter morons with no understanding of consequences.
No, they fly in with their backpack full of marijuana from Los Angeles and go.
Okay, you took it a step further.
Okay, I'm making fun of it, but that's what we say. You know, they're just out there. They're out there so far And they do not belong in Utah if influencing Utah's lands. Utahns do it best.
They don't respect us. They don't respect that we know what to do. They have this idealized, no plant should ever be touched, no animal should ever be touched. People are parasites, protect the tree and the animal over the human being. They've got somewhere their wires got crossed in their heads.
Yeah, and there's no common sense. None. They all have an agenda, and it's, to defeat sportsmen and defeat hunting and get rid of guns. And they have this crazy liberal agenda, and it gets supported by people like Barack Obama and the elitist intellectuals.
Yes, absolutely. There's no question.
And so it comes back to that states' rights again. When we have that strong states' rights and we're able to control our own destiny, Utah can run out those crazy groups. And California might welcome them while they fall apart and finally learn their lesson, right? And Connecticut may allow part of it. But Connecticut's a completely different place than Utah.
Well, if they're allowed to suffer the consequences, they will learn a lesson. If they're not allowed to suffer the consequences, they're going to continue being a leech on society.
Exactly. And we've got to accomplish this one, Candace. While I'm out there, we've got to get it where each state stands on its own 2 feet. Big union state, you stand on your own 2 feet. If you can be big union and make it profitable and make it work and stand on your own, fine. But next door, 3 states over, might be a right-to-work state. And that foreign company that wants to come and choose between Michigan and Iowa, they want to choose Iowa because it's a right-to-work state and it's more profitable for them to work there with no strings attached. That foreign company ought to be able to come and work in Iowa.
Do you know what? Let's even just talk an American company, talking about Boeing, when they were going to relocate to a right-to-work state on the East Coast, one of the Carolinas, I can't remember which one. And the government stopped them. Talk about overreach. Talk about every abuse. Talk about a complete running amok of the federal level.
Why are we not suing that all the way to the Supreme Court? Why do we not have 30 states funding it together to sue that issue all the way to the Supreme Court? I mean, whatever we got to do, Candace.
Yes.
But we've got to unite the states together because that was a great example. The Boeing example is a great one. There's another one out in Pennsylvania, the light bulbs. When they lost a factory of several hundred employees, that the government came in with just the brainiac, wonderful government creating their wonderful world of the best light bulb in the world and most efficient. Instead of letting the free market economy do it, where some people would buy that fancy light bulb, others are going to go with the cheap light bulb.
Well, that fancy light bulb turns out to be deadly. You're supposed to use gloves when you change it, and you're supposed to dispose of it properly. Hello, give me back the incandescent ones. I want them back.
And instead of giving us the choice, right? And then the law of unintended consequences, like Dodd-Frank or whatever, that light bulb company takes off and goes to Mexico now because they were forced to by our dang government. Yeah. And it never in 1,000 years should have happened.
No, it shouldn't. That was one of the violations of the Bush administration that was completely insane, and it was the beginning of the end.
It is, and we've got to get a coalition of states together that if we can't, whatever way we have to find to win it, if it's in the court, in the Supreme Court, and states' rights, then we do it. I mean, if it's working for an amendment, if it's whatever we got to do with these states, we have got to get enough states together to protect our states' rights to accomplish these type of things.
Well, there is a coalition in Nevada attempting to do that with the western states right now. So I'll put you in contact with them because you are right. The states have got to pull together and shut the federal government down and get it back to what it's supposed to be doing.
Yes, the states lent the federal government that power, the Constitutional Convention, when we came together. And the County Fathers were very concerned about too strong of a centralized government. We needed some centralized government to make it all work, but it had to be very balanced. And they were very concerned. They were very careful about putting the Bill of Rights in for individual rights. They were very careful about putting all the checks and balances in, and we've allowed things to take away from that.
We have. Now, Jason, we need to take a quick break, our last break, and about 2.5 minutes, and then we will be back with Jason Buck on Turning the Tide on the other side.